And the Toronto man's word of the week is, where is my guap still, fam? My guap, not no monopoly thing, you know? Beer guap. What's up, fam? It's your boy Demuir here, purveyor of all sounds underground. Thank you for joining me on my YouTube channel today, where I'll be discussing the topic of when the record label says how you should respond to the said point or question or whatever comment. But before we jump into things, what I need from you is that SLC, hit subscribe, like, comment, and more importantly, hit the notifications bell to stay in touch with the new videos that we have up and coming. There's over, I want to say, almost 48% of you now that watch these videos on a regular and don't subscribe. So I don't get it, but whatever. Let's keep it moving. All right, so I just want to share a little bit of background about what inspired this video. It's not unusual from time to time that I get DMs from various people and even comments on my YouTube channel from different people that have said, hey, I'm starting to sign tracks to labels, but they said this to me. Can you give me a suggestion as to how to respond to that? So it leaves everybody in a fair and balanced place. So that's what this video is about. I've taken just, a few of the common scenarios. I'm sure there's more, and I'd love to hear what scenarios you have faced if I haven't covered it off in this video, because I usually join the conversation within 48 hours of posting these videos. So let's jump right into it. All right, so point number one, what to do when the label says love the music, but you don't have that many followers or much of a social media presence overall. And my response to this really is to ask the question back to the label. Is it about the music? Are you interested in me as a person? Or do you think I can get more of a social media presence? Is it really all about that? And they might come back to you and say, well, it's a bit of both, to be honest, which is kind of true. But the reality is that you can have a whole bunch of paid followers, a whole bunch of paid plays, and if the music is garbage, no one's going to play it, and people will catch on pretty soon. So if you're just starting out and you're starting to sign to certain labels, and the whole thing about it is, what I've noticed is it's usually the smaller to medium-sized labels that ask these dumb questions about social media presence. The more successful labels tend to just focus on the music and the development of the artists themselves. So I would just say, call a spade and get them focused back onto the music. And if that isn't sitting well with them, just keep it moving. It just does nothing for your career in the point in time wherever it is. And it also shows you that, hey, their focus is primarily on perception rather than the whole foundation of this thing, which is the music. Point number two, this is a common one, which is they're prepared to sign the music, but they have no release date. So it's all good there. Things happen with different labels. They're busy with their release schedules, or certain things change and they need to review their calendars. So I would say two things to them. One is, ask them if they need a little bit of time to figure out what a solid release date would be like, and just say, hey, you're going to give them 2 weeks. If you know the communication between you and the label has been sparse, and you have their attention now where they're saying, hey, let's go ahead and sign this music, but they don't have a date yet, I would just push for a release clause that looks something like, hey, if you do not come back with a release date in X amount of time, or if the track is not released by this date, then the masters return to you and you're free to do whatever you want with it. That really draws a nice line in the sand for everyone, and it's not necessarily bullying the labels, so to speak. You're just getting very clear on what your expectations are, and you're also respecting your time as a result. Point number three, this happens sometimes, and again, I would say this is more of the smaller to medium-sized labels, but some big labels do engage in this type of behavior, which is, can you make it sound like dot 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 dot? And the moment you hear that, my advice to you is to just go. There is no point in telling an artist to try and sound like somebody else when they're going through the development of their own artistry. It's actually quite selfish in a sense, and very disruptive when you think about it. I couldn't imagine myself as a label owner telling an artist, hey, I want you to sound like this person because that's what's hot right now. I don't care what it does to your own artist development. I just want that, and I think you're close to it. So hey, do that for me. It always benefits me at the end of the day. Who cares about your development? And keep it moving. That's essentially what the label is telling you in that regard. So my whole thing on that one is just to keep it moving. There's no benefit from a label saying, try and sound like somebody else. That's not who you are at the end of the day. Point number 4, I've seen this a couple of times, which is a request from the label saying, can you help us pay for PR? And on this one, everyone knows my thoughts on PR. It's quite cynical at this point. But I do want to say this. Depending on where you are in your career and depending on the type of PR involved, like it could be a tastemaker PR sort of campaign that gets the music into the target DJs that you want to have playing your music because it makes sense for the style of music you're putting out with that particular label. And if that's the case, then, ask to understand the cost, make sure the expectations are clear and what the benefit would be, and then move forward. But I also think more importantly, this offers you as a new or aspiring artist a lot of significant leverage, which is if you're going to help pay for the PR, then you should reconstruct the deal in terms of the term of when they would have the exclusive right to distribute your music. And more importantly, maintain ownership of your masters as a result. I think that's very important to maintain. So this one could vary depending where you are in your career. If you are bringing a substantial amount of assets, like a whole album that they want to drop, they obviously have a lot of faith in the music and can probably only afford so much dollars to promote it. That might be a fair deal at the end of the day, but just make sure you understand that when you're asked that question, you have a lot of leverage as a result. So instead of the original term being 20 years, you can bring that right down to 5 years, push it to that point if you're going to be paying for some of the costs to promote the record. I did this once before with an album, and I actually regret doing the whole PR thing with it because I probably could have been just as effective in taking the album, doing a few MP3s, and sending it to key people that would actually play the music and give me feedback directly, as opposed to paying somebody else thousands of dollars just to get a nice little typed up report of whatever DJ said downloaded for blah blah blah. So the choice is yours on this one, but make sure it works out to more of an advantage to you because you're actually pulling out money plus supplying the asset, which is the music in this case, to help not only yourself, but it also brings credibility to the label. All right, and point number 5. This one I've heard a few times, and it probably, I would say, happens more with medium to larger size labels. Where the economic reality is that you will sign over your music and have it on a nice piece of vinyl, a nice piece of art at the end of the day, and they will also distribute your music digitally, but you'll find that there's not a lot of money in it for you at the end of the day. So when a label presents this in the form of a contract, you need to really step back and ask yourself, what is the overall value for me? What is the benefit for me as the artist? Because I find with these deals, and this is just my opinion at this point, which is you are giving great music to an established label. They're putting your music on vinyl, promoting it and getting it to the right people, which is cool. I have no issue with that. But here's the skinny on it. You're going to be paying through recoupable expenses deep cost. I'm talking in the thousands of dollars because it costs money to produce vinyl. And then you're also telling the label, not only am I giving you the right to distribute my music, but you get to have that right for almost 20 years. A lot of these deals come out to, because they anchor themselves to the fact that, PR and producing vinyl is expensive and it's a lot of upfront costs, which is true, but that's not my fucking problem. You're asking me as the artist to provide assets and to provide music that also lends the label credibility. So there's got to be some middle ground here. And the middle ground is the benefit to you really should look like either one of these things or all of the above for that matter, which is the label is able to get you on a consistent roster of gigs, which is kind of highly unlikely in a lot of cases because there's more people involved. But hey, some labels are able to do this and do it very well. So if that's on the table, I would say go for it. That is one huge benefit because you'll make money from the gigs. You'll be introducing yourself to a number of people like live in terms of the audience, or streaming at least, I guess, for the next year to year and a half. But, that's a huge added benefit to you. The other thing is the economics. So if they're going to offer something in the deal that's like, you know what, we're going to give you 100% of the revenue. And there are labels who do this. One huge label that does this, and I'm not going to name the name of the label because the deal might vary amongst other artists, and I don't want to put them in a weird position as a result. But I've seen that benefit where they put me on gigs and they said, here's 100% of your sales. We just wanted the right to distribute your music and recoup on expenses. So if one of those or both of those things are popping off, I would say absolutely go for it, do your thing, enjoy it. But most of the time, the reality is that the label is taking your music, allowing your art to be put on a nice, delicious piece of collectible vinyl, which is cool. You have a piece of vinyl at the end of the day. But if you're not getting any money back as a result, and they still always have a 50% right to profit from your music, and they're not putting you on any gigs, and they're not saying, or actively going after licensing opportunities that put money in your pocket. My thing is, look, you have technology today that enables you to take charge of your own artistry, build an audience, and create that foundation, and as a result, sell your music directly to them via Bandcamp. Patreon is another solution, and you'll see more money in your pocket at the end of the day. And when it comes to gigs, that's just a marketing thing. It might take you a little bit longer, but why not? If you can get both of those things without having to have somebody else benefit from your music and you're lending credibility to that label, and all they do is not pay you anything or put you on anything at the end of the day, you got to say, hey, there's got to be a better way to do this. And those are my thoughts on what to do when the label says whatever. So let me know your thoughts on this one. I'd appreciate it. I usually join the conversation, as I said earlier, within 48 hours of posting these videos. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. And as the community continues to grow, I wouldn't be surprised if this conversation did not extend to our Discord channel in various ways, shapes, and forms. Because the community there is great. A lot of aspiring DJs and producers sharing tips and whatnot. So I wouldn't be surprised if the conversation landed there. And as well, don't forget about my Patreon and the ongoing remix competition I have going currently, which is the opportunity to release a remix of my track To Be a Star featuring Phil Weeks on my label, Purveyor Underground. Deadline is May 14th. All you got to do is sign up to my Patreon along with Discord. You download the parts from Patreon, do your remix, submit it by May 14th, and both Phil and I will judge. And, if you're lucky, you get to release with both of us on the bill. Much love and respect to you. Peace.